Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about new legislation and new health and safety workplace sort of rules that have come into Australia that are also being discussed or already implemented elsewhere, like Canada and in Britain and parts of the United States and so on. And this is this idea that women are an oppressed minority in the workplace, and that men are violent oppressors of women in the workplace, and that only exceptional intervention by the government can prevent this evil from continuing or getting worse. And apparently it is getting worse, even though we've had 30 years plus of feminisation of the education system. It's apparently never been worse. It's worse than worse. It is totally fucking worse than it's ever been. And so only huge government intervention and arbitrary law and undefined law can stop this. I mean, it's a fucking disaster. We have to do incredible things to stop it because the Nazis are everywhere. So let's have a little look at this. So I was with some amusement. I noticed this a couple of days ago, that these oppressions that women are supposed to suffer are very vague. No one can quite sort of say what they are. And if you read through the if you like, the justification for these laws, you find that it jumps around. So it'll go that well, there's terrible oppression in some third world shithole, poverty-stricken, civil war-stricken country, that there's oppression of women there. So how does that apply to women in the workplace in a first world country like Australia? Well, it doesn't apply, but they jump around using justification that women all over the world are oppressed. We have to accept that all women are oppressed. And they use, again, examples from Africa or wherever. All women are oppressed, therefore we must do something about that here. Same as in climate change. India and China may be the biggest climate, the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, but that doesn't matter because we have to show leadership in the West. Our society has to take the pain and suffering for the sins of others. And it's all very biblical from the sound of it. But so the justification for these draconian interventions, in my view, and not simply draconian, but the introduction of arbitrary ideological law. This is the real danger. That if you want to know what the danger is of all this, it's arbitrary ideological law, not codified law, not clear law, not clearly codified, but arbitrary law where there is a prejudged guilty party based on ideological lines before the conflict even begins. All men are oppressors, and they're fucking damn fucking Nazi. They're all Hitler. They are all Hitler. Let's just get that out the way first. So really, as soon as there's any sort of conflict, then the guilty party is already ideologically predetermined. And so this is how these new work, in my view at least, these new workplace laws and government interventions. Now, again, if it was an real issue, they wouldn't need to tell so many lies and rely on so many tricks and deceptions and misrepresentations and cherry picking. If it was a problem, then it would be a problem. The facts would clearly state that, but there are no facts to support this, and it's all a fabrication. It's all a load of ideological, hysterical, lesbian gender studies nonsense that's being pushed at us, but nonetheless, it's here, it's there, so we have to understand what it is and somehow work around it or deal with it. Now, for those who are rich and who can take these matters into higher courts and go through appeals, then they'll be, they can get through. But for 98% of the population that can't even contemplate affording that or can't represent themselves, then they're screwed. There's nothing they can do, assuming this is applied universally. Now, it would differ workplace to workplace, I suppose. For example, in heavy industries where it's very dangerous and there's a lot of death from workplace injuries, there's hardly any women working there. So there's very few women to say that they're oppressed. I was looking at an engineering or smallish engineering firm, like in heavy engineering, the firm out in doing the hard work out in the field, and they maybe say they had 100 people in the firm. 99% were men, and there was one woman. She was answering the phone, in the office. So, but let's have a look at this generally now. The big thing, the new thing that I've seen it around, but only recently, is a psychosocial. So this has been introduced as if you like, the thin end of the wedge to come in and accuse someone of some sort of, or a company or a business, or men generally, of some sort of criminality. So you have to take in the wider social context of the woman's situation to determine whether or not, or just how much she's oppressed. So if you've got a black lesbian single mother who's a recent migrant and can't speak English, you got the job through affirmative action, then anything that's done to her or said to her, or any treatment she may receive, can be viewed in this psychosocial sort of way, in the same way as intersectionality views things in the race hustling game. Then the woman can claim in some way to be somehow oppressed or shortchanged in again, some way, somehow. And it doesn't need to be overt or planned or just, sheer accident or misadventure. It doesn't matter. The employer and the people in the are accountable. So if you say good morning, then to a woman, and good morning is not a greeting where she comes from, then you can be guilty of something. If you say nothing to her, then you can also be guilty. If you say good morning in her language and her thing, then you're guilty of appropriation. So really, the woman's decision to say, look, I'm being hard done by, because the psychosocial means that any interaction of any sort can be construed in the spectrum of psychosocial sort of issues, which is not, you can't codify something, I guess. It's just purely ideological, but it's enough to create a human rights issue, or indeed a workplace safety issue, because now feeling anxious. So we've gone from feeling afraid or feeling threatened, so feeling anxious. Now there's a lot of people, plenty of people I know are anxious, particularly women. They're just anxious people. That just sort of their whole view of the world is one of permanent anxiety about everything. They're there's a character in South Park which my parents are talking over there, maybe they're planning to murder me, or something. That sort of level of anxiety, that there are people that see that anything they see around them, any interaction, is a cause for nail-biting anxiety, and therefore they can claim to be oppressed because of this psychosocial bullshit. They can claim to be oppressed and then can launch legal proceedings. And there's no shortage of human rights groups, NGOs, activists of every flavour, government departments, a plethora of government departments that are eager and willing, in fact, gagging to take up the case, because they can stick it up some straight white fucking Nazi. Is he straight? Yeah. Is he male? Yeah. Is he Christian? Oh, fuck, let's get that Nazi motherfucker. So there's a huge ideological sort of wave of people that want to go after the straight white male. And this is just another, it's just a purely, in my view, it's just a purely anti-white sort of scam. Now, there's not so much that a reluctance to go after brown and black men, but the view being that, well, they're just sort of culturally unaware of how they're supposed to behave. So let's not be too hard on them. But those damn straight white male Christians, let's get those, because whatever they did, or whether they did nothing or did or didn't do anything, it's because they're fucking Nazis, and we have to get them. So this is really how this is playing out now. It is impossible to create a workplace environment that meets given it's so vague and all encompassing, that meets all the psychosocial oppression criteria, and I don't know if any company could really attempt it. Interestingly, I spoke to a few CEOs, just mentioned in passing, this is interesting. What do you reckon? It's all bullshit. And they're already of the view that there's just nothing they can do. Now, it's the same. There are companies that are in a bind though, because they have a lot of government contracts. If you don't have a number of black lesbians on your board of directors, you can't even bid for certain government business. And the government is taking a bigger and bigger and bigger share of the total gross domestic product or gross national product. In government expenditures are key to thousands of businesses surviving and prospering. The government said, well, we're going to give you these juicy fat with profit contracts, but you have to do what we want. You have to put lesbians on the board. You have to bring in a lot of black and brown illiterate peasants from the third world. You have to do what we tell you to do. Otherwise, we're not going to give you these sweetheart contracts. So these people, these companies that are forced to take on are also being infiltrated with activists from NGOs or gender studies departments and these sort of things, activists, and they're there to be offended. They are professional. I want you to offend me so I can take you white motherfuckers to court. So that they've got these activists that are being inserted like a fifth column into these businesses, looking for and wanting to be offended, wanting to find some excuse or pretext to go and take legal action, and which will all be paid for by the NGOs or the government. It's no skin off these people's noses. They're not going to cost them anything. And the word of these people is considered to be sacrosanct and casting concrete fact. A bit like you see in the divorce courts. If the woman makes an allegation, unsupported, uncorroborated, then the judge will often say, I am treating your comment as fact. Now, Mr. Smith, and the man, the straight white male, if you want to contradict what Mrs. Smith has said, you need 500 witnesses, 10,000 this and so on. So that the evidence bar that the guy has to jump over is impossible. So the judge can go, oh, well, that's it. You're a child abuser, bang. So that sort of level of ideological activism is what I think we're going to see in these. So it's actually, there's nothing in this that creates social harmony or leads to it or promotes it. That they're saying we're here to stop discrimination, we're here to stop workplace harassment. That's total and utter bullshit. Now, the facts that they use or purport to use, this is also is nonsense. According to a study by so and so. Now, they don't say that the study is by a gender studies lesbian academic, and if you go onto their online social media postings, they have a vitriolic hatred of straight white men, of the family, of capitalism, of straight white males, of Western society, a vitriolic hatred. And yet they're the ones who are supposed to be producing these independent, completely impartial, factual reports on workplace discrimination. And of course, this is absolute crap. None of these things are reliable. So there's no cause factor. There is zero cause factor for workplace discrimination. If it exists at all, it's I know plenty of women in the workplace, and they report they've never been discriminated against, and they're not necessarily anxious or nervous people, but they're white, but they haven't been discriminated against. So now on the other side, there's arguments that as more and more affirmative action black and brown men who come from third world countries are put into the workforce, then they may behave inappropriately towards female colleagues in the workplace. But that's a different matter, because the propaganda suggests or implies or asserts that the only transgressors are straight white males. There is no other. It's only those straight white male fucking fascist fucking Nazis. It's them and no one else. This it's argued, well, we can't really say it's the black and brown people, so we have to introduce legislation or introduce workplace policies and so on to combat the third world black and brown men who aren't used to working alongside women. In a lot of these countries that they come from, women aren't permitted to work. So these men would would come into workplaces where they've never known women as work colleagues or supervisors or anything like that. So it's supposed to be. So one argument is that, well, really these laws are targeted, meant to actually work against the black and brown people. But that's a bit different because again, coming back to the black and brown people in third world countries, the view of the human rights commissions and all these groups that are salivating over getting the straight white male Christian, they don't care about these. If they even take up the case against the black or brown man, it'll be just I'll pay $100 fine and let's forget about it. But the straight white male, they want a scalp. They want national headlines. They want that motherfucker screwed. So this is the difference. Again, we're looking at a situation where the law is not applied equally to all people, that it passes through an ideological filter before it's actually hits the ground. But this is just more insanity, and I say it just brings intersectionality into the workplace, in my view, and just more ideological Marxist craziness. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.